Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. Every day gets a little bit more crazy, doesn't it? Anyway, here we are, and we're going to talk about Nancy Guthrie today. In this video, I've been following this case. We've been following this case, haven't we? It has now been well over 30 days since Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, stolen from her bed in the early hours of the morning over there in Tucson, Arizona. Literally plucked from her bed this old lady who had problems, mobility problems, heart problems, no problems with dementia or anything like that. So very quickly, it was known that she hadn't wandered off, because sometimes older people, don't they, when they've got dementia, etc., they do wander off. So that's the dog knocking the table there, so the camera's wobbling. Yeah, just disappeared, didn't she, in the middle of the night? Some drops of blood left on the step. We don't know what blood was left inside. We don't know about the inside of the scene, whether there was blood there also. But both the Sheriff's Department and Savannah Guthrie, who is Nancy's mum, who is a famous journalist, news presenter in the USA, both of them have said that Nancy was taken from her bed. So I think we can assume, that at least is true. Now, we've had a lot of conflicting information in this case, mainly from the sheriff of Pima County, the clown sheriff, I like to call him. I'm sorry, it's never proven to me any different. He's said so many conflicting things right from the beginning, and we're going to look at his latest interview in this video. And he's still, you listen to him talking, and at the end of it, when he's finished, you think, what did he even say? What did he actually say there? What did he clarify there? What did he confirm there? What did he deny? Nothing. Get to the bottom of what he's saying. It's just word salad, but a crap word salad, like the worst salad you could ever imagine, really. So we're going to be talking about his latest interview. We're going to look at a YouTube channel, which is a local reporter there in Tucson. And she interviewed Brianna. I think it's Brianna Taylor, is it? She interviewed she's also the person that interviewed Luke Daly, so she gets quite a lot of scoop interviews there in that area. Brianna Whitney. And also she actually interviewed Laurie Daybell. You remember the Doomsday Cult mum, that horrible woman that left a trail of bodies behind her, quite a few ex-husbands, her children, her brother, who was like a hitman, and then she married Chad Daybell, and his wife, before that, his wife died mysteriously, and it turns out they killed her. Anyway, Brianna interviewed her, and she's a very good interviewer, I think, because she... What's the matter? What's the matter? Dog's whining about something. She's a very good interviewer because she stays calm. She asks the right questions. She doesn't come down on one side or another. That's good for a journalist, isn't it? But I think she does ask awkward questions. I don't think she avoids the awkward questions. So, we're going to watch the interview that she did with Sheriff Nanos. We're also going to have a look at her YouTube video that she put out, sort of summarising the case so far. We're going to look at it under fair use. And yeah, what else have I got to tell you about Nancy before we start properly? Let me just show you this again. You know, it's in, how can we forget this guy's face? And that, well, what we can see of it. I think we're all pretty familiar, aren't we, with this CCTV footage. A lot of deliberation about it. Very dark moustache and beard, whether that's the light that just makes it like that. His eyes are almost look like they've got makeup on, but you know, a lot of men have very sort of dark eyes like that. Or was there some sort of attempt to disguise, even under the balaclava, even under the ski mask, you know, and then trying to be all like a ninja, going into someone's house in the dead of night, but wearing a reflective backpack and wearing light clothes. You know, nothing makes sense in this case. Things don't gel together, do they? And then you get people saying, oh, he was an amateur. Well, if he was an amateur, why after 30 odd days is he still walking around free? He can't, you know, he's covered his tracks reasonably well, you know, to not be arrested instantly. Now, of course, we have had 2 detainments in this case. There was the guy called Carlos, I think he was a DoorDash driver, was detained and released. And then more recently, there was Luke Daly and his mother. They were detained and released. So nobody has been charged or even arrested. None of these people were actually arrested. They were detained. They were spoken to. Their vehicles were searched, their houses were searched, but nobody didn't result in any charges. And we still do not know why these particular 2 people, Carlos and Luke, were targeted for questioning. We don't know why. They say they don't know why. All we know is they were released. And we don't know that they've been cleared. We're going to hear what the sheriff has to say about whether they've been cleared in a moment. Again, if you can understand what he's saying, please let me know, because I haven't got a clue what this man is talking about most of the time. Anyway, first of all, I just want to say thank you to you all. Thank you to for watching, for liking, for subscribing. Please think about subscribing. It's absolutely free if you're not subscribed already. It's free, and it really helps to support my channel. Also, liking the video is another free way you can help support my channel if you enjoy watching it. If you don't, well, then that's fine as well. You know, each to their own, each to their own. Sharing, of course, is another free way you can help, and hyping, this hype feature, though not all videos that you can hype. I don't really understand how hyping works, but you can hype videos sometimes. And then a special thank you to my members. Today is Friday. Tonight it's Members Live, exclusive Members Live, later on tonight. And we're going to talk about some unexplained mysteries. And special thank you to those of you who buy me Ko-fis, especially as I'm trying to, you know, everything's stalled a little bit with my, you know, trying to buy a new computer, but get back on track. Anyway, thank you for that. Anyone who's bought me a Ko-fi, anyone who sent me a super sticker or any other contribution, thank you. And hello, let me just take that off while I say hello to my lurkers. Hello, my lovely lurkers. The people who like to watch the lives but don't like to chat. Hello to replay. Thank you for those that. And there's a couple of you in the chat. Let's see who to say hello to. Happy Friday. Hi, Mark. Hi, Lily. Hope everybody's well. And the good news in Spain is, apart from the fact that Pedro Sanchez stood up to President Trump, that's the really good news in Spain. But it has stopped raining. The even better news is it has stopped raining finally, though supposedly we're going to get even more rain later. Don't know what's happened this year in Spain. So if you think, oh, Spain, lovely hot country, not this winter. Oh my God, it's been freezing. As you can tell by the big jumpers, I haven't managed to get any of my more summery clothes out yet. Which leads me to actually something that comes up in the interview with Luke Daly that we'll be looking at. You know, of course, Luke Daly was dressed like he had so many clothes on in his interview, and yet it was supposedly 90 degrees outside. Everybody else was wearing T-shirts, and Brianna Whitney, the lady interviewed him, she just had a nice little red number on, sleeveless dress. But not Luke. Luke was, he looked like, I don't know if you ever watched Friends and you watched that episode when Joey put on all of Chandler's clothes. That's what Luke looked like in this interview. He looked like he had at least 2 shirts on, waistcoat, tie, etc. You know, very, but that might be just how he dresses all the time. Maybe he was trying to cover up his tattoos. Maybe he was just trying to look respectable. You know, who knows what the reason was. But we're going to look at that as well. So where will we start? Oh, right. So I think as well, it's important to say, if you follow any of the live streamers in this case, which have, you know, they've been very interesting. There's not so many of them there now as there were. There's not so much media there in general now at Nancy Guthrie's house because, well, the news cycle has changed. It's all about the war now, isn't it? There's a lot of news about the war, etc. And as with news channels, etc., it always moves on, doesn't it? Very sadly, there are a lot of sad true crime cases, and there's always another one round the corner. But a couple of the live streamers have stayed there. Hey! So I'm just not sure why my dog's gone upstairs, because you've got to watch her because she doesn't like the other dogs. So, oh, she's gone upstairs, gone to the loo, I think. Oh, get a dog, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Oh my God. Anyway, so yeah, you know, there's very few media outside Nancy's now. But there are a couple of them, and a couple of them are live streaming, like JLR Investigates. He's still there. And it was very interesting, actually, yesterday or last night, as far as Spain's concerned. Because, of course, I'm on a different time warp to America. And in America now, it's nighttime, isn't it? And but last evening in Spain, it was sort of morning time in America, and JLR was out there as usual, and there was quite a bit of FBI activity. So the FBI were back out there interviewing, you know, going around the houses for whatever reason. You know, I mean, of course, we don't know what they're going around the houses for. Is it to see if there's any more footage? Is it to see if the neighbours remember anything in particular that happened on a certain day? But they didn't go to all the houses. It looked like they were maybe looking at an escape route, because I just can't. What surprises me is where's the vehicle? You know, to take Nancy away, whether she was alive or dead, you need a vehicle. She couldn't have been taken away without a vehicle, could she? Whether there was one person involved, one person could have done it, I think, or was there more than one person involved? But there's got to be some footage somewhere of a suspicious vehicle. And of course, there has been footage reported, but you know, a vehicle has never been identified. You know, the police have never said, oh, we're looking for a certain vehicle or anything like that. So yeah, nothing as far as that's concerned. But it did look like these law enforcement, FBI, I think it was the Special Violence Unit or something, violent. They were going around almost like where somebody, because, if Nancy, well, not if, this man went to Nancy's house, whatever, and because he was caught on the CCTV, messing about with the camera. So we can safely assume, I think, that they entered into Nancy's house. And that was Nancy's blood that was on the porch. So whether she had a severe injury or whether, it could have been just a very slight injury, but because she's on blood thinners for a heart, maybe she bled quite a lot more than you would normally if you weren't on blood thinners. Again, we just don't know. And as I say, we don't know what blood, if any, was inside the house. We know nothing about really what was inside the house. But this person had to get Nancy in a car one way or another, whether it was alive or dead. They could not carry her, in that dead of night, pitch blackness through cactuses and God knows what. She had to be put in a car and taken away. So sooner or later, hopefully, a car will be identified, some vehicle. Anyway, they were around there and they were, knocking on doors and asking whatever they were asking. And yeah, so the point that I'm trying to say here is, so yes, definitely, it's not a cold case. I think we can safely assume a case can't be cold within 30 odd days anyway, because a case only goes cold when every single lead has been exhausted, followed up and come to nothing. That's when they declare a case a cold case, isn't it? When they've got no more fresh leads. They've exhausted every lead that they've been given. And we have to bear in mind that because of that huge reward that Savannah and the family are offering of $1 million, leading to the arrest of, or the discovery of Nancy, they've got thousands of leads. They probably can hardly keep up with the leads, but they've got to explore every one. And who knows, the next lead may be a lead that they've not been able to pursue yet. They've not been able to get around yet. Could be tomorrow they pick the lead that breaks the case, It's definitely not a cold case. They're definitely still working on it. And they'll be trying their very best to find out where Nancy is, be it, alive or dead, isn't it? We don't know. We cannot, as I say, imagine that she could be alive now. But she might be, she just might be. So, yeah, we'll see, won't we? So, right. So, Mr. Sheriff, Deputy Dog, as I call him, because honestly, he is a very confusing guy. I know he can't give, he'd be better off just saying he can't say. Instead, he tries to say something. But the problem is, what he tries to say, it doesn't make sense, or it contradicts something he said before, or when you try and think about what he said, you literally cannot make sense of what he said. Maybe it's all just too much for him. I think he is in completely over his head. Now, he hadn't done an interview for a little while. And then yesterday he did this interview with Brianna, and we're going to be looking at that. But let's have a look at Brianna's video that she released and see what she's got to say about the whole thing. So I really like this reporter. I hope she doesn't mind fair use. Hopefully not. But anyway, we'll see. So this is her channel, Brianna Whitney and Arizona's Family. I think they're two separate channels. I'm not sure, but they collaborate together. And so we're going to have a watch of her video. Let me just make sure it's sharing. So yeah, if you want her information for her whenever it comes out, your best bet would be to subscribe. Subscribe to Brianna. Why is that not coming? There you go. There you go. Hey, come here. Rocky. Come down. What are you doing? You know, dogs are like kids, aren't they? When you can't see them and they go quiet, you think, what are they up to? So I'm not sure what she was up to up there. So anyway, she's down there now. Yeah, get on the sofa so I can relax. Yeah, you just never.
All right, well, welcome back, you guys. Gosh, we are just farther and farther into the Nancy Guthrie investigation and her disappearance. And it feels like somebody burned several. So Savannah actually went back to New York. She was at the Today Show today in studio with her coworkers, with her friends, giving them hugs, asking, thanking them, praying together. So we know she has now left Tucson to go back, and she plans to return to the Today Show. They didn't give a time on that. Back to a place.
Yeah, so Savannah apparently is going back to the Today Show. We talked about that the other day. And some people are criticising that. I just don't understand that at all. What is she supposed to do after 30 odd days? She's got a family in New York. She doesn't live in Arizona, don't forget. She lives in New York. She's got a family there. She's got a job there. And, what... Gosh, I mean, I'm sure as soon as something happens, she'll be back on her flight back there. She just can't sit around. It must be torture just sitting around not knowing what's going on. And I'm sure she feels better now. They've got private investigators involved. And also that the FBI seems to be taking more control now, thank God.
That she also loves and really a second family to her, which is the Today Show and NBC family. Of gloves that was found on the side of the road about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. And that's a place I saw the area that it was just like right off one of the main drags. That DNA came back as a match to a nearby restaurant worker. And that person is not considered to be part of the investigation.
Yeah, so we talked about that yesterday. The DNA from one of the gloves that was found came back to be a restaurant worker. We don't know how it was found to be a restaurant worker, whether the police went round to local restaurants and tested everyone's DNA, or, if people volunteered their DNA or maybe even a restaurant worker said, oh, that was he phoned them up and said, look, that's my glove. We just don't know, or we don't know if it came through CODIS, or we don't know if it came through genealogy. But anyway, it's not connected with the case. That's what they have said.
That means that person is not considered to be a person of interest, to be a suspect, none of that. And so that's important when you're talking about, is that glove related or not? No. Doesn't seem like it is. And I know a lot of people were hoping that there was going to be some answers. There's also been a lot of other gloves found in the area that were part of the investigation. We're going to get into that. If a neighborhood today, they were talking
about
different
crime task force that was out going around to people's houses. So there you go, FBI.
Neighbors as the investigation is ongoing. But again, we still don't know where Nancy is. We still don't know the legitimacy of the ransom notes, even the first two that came into the news stations and TMZ that had those deadlines on them.
Yeah, the ransom notes are an absolute mystery to me, that they haven't been able to be traced back to whoever sent them. I don't personally think they're anything to do with Nancy's disappearance, but maybe they are. But why have they not been able to be traced? I mean, whoever sent those ransom notes and managed to not be caught, they are clever, aren't they? They are clever, or at least technically clever, because to be able to send ransom notes, by email, and not be able to be traced back by the FBI, for God's sake. Well, they're pretty tech savvy, we can presume, can't we? But whether they're actually anything to do, I think it's unlikely that they're anything to do with the crime itself, because no proof of life was ever sent, or proof of death. I'm sure they could have ransomed not only Nancy alive, but obviously that's the best case scenario. But at the end of the day, Nancy's family want her back one way or another. They don't want to think of her just out there somewhere and they haven't got a clue where she is. So I'm sure there's a way. And Savannah said the ransom, not the ransom, the reward could be paid in cash. They could be anonymous. I mean, it'd be difficult if they are the actual perpetrators to be anonymous. But yeah, that $1 million reward, normally a reward like that normally brings someone out the woodwork. But of course, the police have got all these leads and they've got to go through them one by one. And you know what? If they've got 20,000 leads, it could be the 20,000th lead that it finds the perpetrator. The leads come in, they don't know. I mean, they have to make a judgment on which are more viable than others, but they don't really know until one comes up. Sometimes it's something that you don't think. Look what happened with the Delphi killer, Richard Allen. It was just the office worker having a look through, the volunteer, just having a look through and thinking, oh, he's been interviewed. Or, it can be one little thing. It's not necessarily, you could go through, let's say, 1,000 leads that come to nothing, but they've all got to be explored. And then the 1,001th lead. So, they're just plowing their way through everything, I suppose.
Still don't know if those are credible or not. There's been alleged other notes that have come in. We just don't know and don't have any more answers on that. We do know that mixed DNA from inside Nancy Guthrie's home is still being tested in a lab that has not come back yet. And so we're still waiting on that. One question that people had was, did the DNA from the glove, was that linked to the restaurant worker through genetic genealogy? I asked PCSD that yesterday because it was confusing. They were doing all sorts of different testing. And as you recall, the reason that they were doing genetic genealogy testing on the gloves was because they told us that it didn't come back to a hit in CODIS, which is the FBI's database. So when I asked them that, and for clarification, was that genetic genealogy? Was that another, private lab or something different database? They just said they wouldn't provide additional details. So we still don't know. We can assume, though, it's not through CODIS. So it would have either been genetic genealogy or another database. So the investigation, of course, is ongoing. And we have new interview sound from Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. So he knows he is for the handling of this, the handling of the scene, the handling of the media, what he is or isn't saying. And so he was asked about some of that today with our sister station. We work together with them. He says lots of valuable evidence is still being analyzed, both digital and DNA evidence. But one thing that was highly contested was the video of the abductor, that surveillance video. And we were talking about this the other week. There were sources that had come out to multiple media outlets, including our own, that said one of the pictures that shows the masked individual, the masked man with no backpack, and it looks like different lighting, was actually from a different day than the abductor video where he's knocking, he's putting the plants up on the door, and then that camera, that PCSD has been asking neighbors for surveillance video, started asked about that because they have said that there's no timestamp on the video to prove that. The confusion there was that when this investigation began and they had their first and only press conference, they had timestamps in that timeline that said exactly when somebody was detected on the camera, when that camera was disabled, and then when Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker detached or disconnected.
I've actually done 2 press conferences. He did one the very next day, didn't he, where he looked, he got everything wrong, all the days and what have you. He's not, and then he did do the other one with the timeline. And now he's saying that they haven't got a timestamp or even a day on these pictures. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So then how does he even know it was that same day that Nancy went missing? If it's true what he's saying, it's not true what he's saying. I don't believe a word he says. So listen to it. Well, she's going to play it now. Honest to God, you'll be, well, I was just like, what? And I'm sure you'll be exactly the same. What an idiot this sheriff is.
Some point. Chris Nanos was asked about that today and whether or not there is a timestamp on that picture that is from an alleged different day, which would suggest that the abductor had been at Nancy Guthrie's home before. Here's what he said about it.
Was there a timestamp at some point in time? Could have been. Oh, that image they gave us doesn't have.
Now, what he says, that image they gave us doesn't have a timestamp. So he's not actually saying there isn't a timestamp. He's saying that image they gave us, presumably means the FBI by that, is it? Or does he mean the sort of Google company or whatever that do? What's he talking about? It's either a yes or no answer. Does it have a timestamp? That's a yes or no answer, not, oh, it could have had one. He's a fool, this guy. Or is it that the FBI are not telling him because they know he's a fool and they don't want to give anything away to him? So this is one of the pictures, isn't it? And they do look like they're on different days because although it looks like the same person, he does seem to have on a different jacket in this picture, and he doesn't have a rucksack on. That's the 2 main differences, isn't it, really?
Have that. What I tell people is this: they say, well, of course it's 2 different days. Look at the lighting, or look at the.
Of course it's 2 different days. Look at the lighting. But he's not saying that he's got proof that it was 2 different days. Anyway, at least he's sitting in his office with his sheriff shirt on this time, not that silly burgundy purpley shirt he had on, where I don't know what he thought he was commenting on there. This is a case, a police case. He should have his sheriff's uniform on, for God's sake. Anyway, so he sat there, but this guy, honestly, if I was married to this man, I honestly, I won't believe a word he says. I think he's an expert in waffle. I might be good at waffle, but my waffles are not lies. I just don't think. I think he's good at sort of confusing. In the end, he'd confuse you so much that you'd be exhausted when you're trying to find out what had happened. So you'd be so exhausted at the end of it, you'd just go, oh, okay, because you couldn't be bothered listening to him anymore. In the end, it'd be like white noise.
The different attire he's in, or whatever. I look at that video and go, I have no way of knowing that that's 2 different days. I understand someone might assume that, someone might speculate that, but we don't work on assumptions or speculation. We work on evidence.
Yeah, what? So you try and make sense of that, what he just says there.
Days. Look at the lighting, or look at the different attire he's in, or whatever. I look at that video and go, I have no way of knowing that that's 2 different days. I understand someone might assume that, someone might speculate that, but we don't work on assumptions or speculation.
Oh my God. I mean, really, I, the thing is, if he doesn't know what day it was, how does he know that the first one wasn't on the day that Nancy was kidnapped and the second one was 10 days before? How does he know? And so, what basically saying, they don't even know if they were what day they were from, so they could be from any. You just can't keep up with this guy, and you just can't understand what he's saying.
We work on evidence. And the
Yeah.
evidence in front of us tells us you have a man dressed in this attire in one image, and you have him dressed this way in another image. There is no way to, with certainty, say this is a different day. Somebody might be able to speculate that, but again, evidence takes us there, not speculation.
But so where does the evidence take you, Mr. Nanos? He said evidence takes us there, but it doesn't say where it's taking us. Uh, it's like, so he's just spoke for what, 5-10 minutes about that, and he said nothing that we can understand that to bring us any further. Just saying, oh, I could speculate that, but I don't know. And we go where the evidence takes us. We don't know what the evidence is. Is it possible that the FBI just are keeping him out of the loop and he really just doesn't know? But he doesn't want to say, oh, I don't know because the FBI haven't told me, because then he'd look foolish. So, well, he looked foolish anyway. But do you know what I mean? Do you think that's possible that the FBI are just aren't telling him?
Might be able to speculate that, but again, evidence takes us there, not speculation.
Now let's talk about the gloves in the case, because Sheriff Nanos is asked about this. So we know that the DNA on this black glove, this pair of black gloves on the side of the road, ruled out for the restaurant worker. But there has been conversation about there being multiple gloves found in this investigation. Are they related? Are they not? Sheriff Nanos is asked about it, and here's what he says.
There's a story, the search teams and the deputies were just throwing their gloves everywhere. Well, that is so far from the truth. That's just bunk. We know that our search and
It's bunk, he says. It's bunk that people were just dropping their gloves everywhere, the searchers and this, that, and the other. But you'll see in a minute, it was the FBI that said that. Wasn't the streamers or the mainstream media or anybody else who was saying that these gloves were being discarded by law enforcement. It was the FBI that said they were being discarded by law enforcement. And don't forget, also, Nancy's top was just, that had been used for the scent dogs, was just left in a heap, until somebody mentioned it and it was gathered away. He just talks rubbish. So it's not people making it up that these gloves were discarded by law enforcement. The FBI said it, and Brianna's going to point that out in a minute.
rescue team last night, they were out last night. Go tell me you find gloves laying around. That's not how they work.
No.
They're very well trained. They're very well experienced. And to be honest with you, every glove we've issued in this department to all of our search and rescues and our department members for decades, they're blue. They're not black.
No, they don't use blue gloves, according to him. They only use black ones, so it can't be anything to do with them.
Just those are silly things that people make statements of, and then they just grow.
Here's the problem with that soundbite that Sheriff Nanos just said. He said this wouldn't be from any deputies, anything like that. The problem is that on February 16th, PCSD put out an update, and they point to a statement being released by the FBI in conjunction with them. And in that PCSD email, it says, quote, investigators collected approximately 16 gloves in various areas near the house. Most of them were searchers' gloves that they discarded in various areas when they searched the vicinity. The searchers, the investigators, This is why this is so confusing. Now, that was something that the FBI put out that PCSD agreed with, but in the end, there were official on the record statements being made that the searchers in this investigation and the investigators found gloves discarded during that time. So yeah, this is where people are really confused about comment.
It's just so he said that. He said, oh, I don't know where that's bunk. I don't know where people are getting that from. Well, they're getting it from the FBI because it was the FBI that said that. Does he not even realise? Does he not even realise what he's saying? Is he such a megalomaniac, such a narcissist that everybody says he is? Because nobody comes out in defence of him and says he's a brilliant leader or a brilliant person. It's the opposite, isn't it? Everybody's always criticising him. Is he such a narcissist, that he doesn't even understand himself what he's saying? He's contradicting the FBI. So, of course, the story goes, if you like, and to be honest, I think it's 100% true. He was investigated by the FBI. There's bad blood between him and the FBI. He was investigated for misappropriation of funds a few years ago when he was sheriff before. So he doesn't like the FBI. He's on record of being quite snarky about the FBI. So there's definitely an issue here between these two. They probably hate him and he hates them. And, you can see, I think, the stress in his face on this interview. Now, he's got an opportunity here, or he had it. I think he's lost it now, because I think no matter what he does now, people won't believe him. But he had an opportunity, to work, let the FBI help, let the FBI even take over. Nobody would be surprised at that. He's a sheriff there of Pima County. He's out of his depth completely. And he should have just acknowledged that. But his ego won't let him. This is all about ego, personally, I think.
It is very confusing to a lot of people for that reason. Sheriff Nanos also addressed some other things. And as we're going to get into my analysis of the Luke Daly interview and the Mary Daly interview, he was asked if Luke Daly and Carlos, who was also detained and released, the DoorDash driver that was since, investigated, are these two men cleared? The only people before today that Sheriff Nanos has said are cleared are the Guthrie siblings and their spouses in the Guthrie family as suspects or potential suspects in this case. So are Luke Daly and Carlos cleared? Here's what he said.
What I will say is we had what we believed to be probable cause to take action against both those individuals and the residence they occupied. That probable cause that we felt was strong was given to the U.S. attorney, the county attorney, and a magistrate, a judge. And they agreed that, yes, here's a warrant, go perform your duties. That court order, that warrant, in both cases was served, and we got what we got from it, and we're moving on.
We're moving on. So he didn't.
So, no, she's going to say he didn't say that they were cleared. And maybe you can't say that. But why not just say that? Why not just say, look, until this case is resolved, no one's completely clear? That's a fair enough thing to say, isn't it? So he just came out with another load of waffle that by the end of it, yeah. And I'll tell you what, if I was Carlos or Luke and I was genuinely innocent, I'd be fuming. It's like, what? So anyway, all he had to say was really nobody's clear until this case is resolved. No one's 100% clear till this case is resolved, but as of now, we've got no reason to. Surely he must have spoke to the media before. He seems to not know how to speak to the media.
Say yes, they are cleared, or no, they are not, but simply we are moving on. So you can kind of take from that what you will. Nanos went on to say after that soundbite that there have been no other search warrants served that he is aware of any other persons of interest in.
Yeah, and that's a funny thing to say that he is aware of. You know, they're definitely the FBI cutting him out of this loop, and he knows it because friends say no, there's none that he's aware of, and not just no, there's no others. He's not confident that there might not be other things going on that he hasn't been told.
This case so far, as far as persons of interest go, they obviously have search warrants digitally and all things like that, but as far as potential persons of interest, potential people in this case, there have been no other search warrants served. Let's talk about my interviews with Luke and Mary Daly earlier this week down in Tucson. I'm monitoring some of the comments here on my computer as we go. And I'm so happy that you guys are commenting and asking questions. Please ask me more. One thing that I just saw was, what were the conditions of my interviews with Luke and Mary? Was there a time limit? Were there certain questions, etc.? The answer to that is no. And I'll give you a little bit of behind the scenes. I had been working with the attorney in this case. This is a well-known attorney in Arizona. We've actually worked with him on other cases. He is the one representing Luke and Mary. Luke first, Mary second. I made a list of questions that I wanted to ask. His attorney was in there and could step in if he needed to or wanted to. And that is very standard when we do interviews with either alleged criminals, alleged suspects, people detained and released. Typically, an attorney is in there with us, and they can choose if they want to stay. Also, one other media outlet with any crime in this case as of now, which means, from my standpoint as a journalist and as an interviewer, I treat them as such. Some of you may have seen my interviews with Lori Vallow Daybell, a convicted child killer, interview with the man who is facing charges for allegedly crucifying a pastor. Interviews, sit down, very serious in a crime case, are different than the interviews I did with the Dailies, because they're not charged with anything. They were detained and released. And so you have questions about where they were, what they were doing, what those detainments were like. Absolutely. But are these two different people than the convicted criminals or confessed that the respect on where must come from being the fact that they are a guy that is abducted in 3 video.
On the surveillance video, the abductor, the masked person. Is that?
It's not me. I don't see the resemblance of it looking like me, but absolutely not. I have nothing to do with this case.
Nothing to do with it. Do you have any idea who is involved in the abduction?
I don't. If I did, I would happily tell my police anything. I'm everyone else. That's it.
So he says that is not him unequivocally in the video, no matter what people say. So then I wanted to ask him, well, how did this all unfold that Friday night when you guys were detained? He said that 2 sheriff's vehicles were what started out as following him driving home. He said he was then pulled over by that Culver's, and you can see the video of that Range Rover search. We have some pulled over to get out of his car, but they didn't say what they were actually doing. Here you go. You can see the FBI agents here. That's his Range Rover, the gray silver Range Rover there. They asked him car, they processed that was Culver's, but he said things were relatively had to say.
Near anywhere or have any connection to this the whole time for this, or they're trying to pin this on me somehow.
Did they tell you what led them to you? I mean, something made them believe they needed to talk to you about it. What was that?
I asked them. They didn't tell me any information about that. And I have thought of any type of
area of the time, like the overnight, or would it have been, we've tracked this person near the
well,
abduction
I
scene?
live near her house, but I mean, I didn't even know that until after the fact. Like, I barely just learned where her actual house was in relation to mine.
Yeah, it's funny that interview, because when I first watched it, I really felt sorry for him, and I thought, oh, I think, you know, he came over as quite honest. But when I realised all those clothes he had on, I still just can't move past it. Now, it may mean absolutely nothing, but I just don't understand why he was wearing so many clothes.
Okay, and so some people have said that they thought it was confusing that he told me that once a lot more FBI agents showed up that he was like, oh, this must be for Nancy. And a lot of people were like, well, why would he just assume that was for Nancy, especially because he does have a criminal past with drugs? To that, I would say, at least from my standpoint, it was odd that there'd be so many sheriff's deputies and FBI agents surrounding him, and his mom was paying attention to the case. She had talked to him about it, and so it's possible that it was about Nancy Guthrie, but some people have questioned why he just assumed that would be about Nancy as opposed to any other crime case in the area. But, you know, again, is there typically FBI at a crime, at a possible just traffic stop in Tucson? No, not typically. So he is detained with his Range Rover at the Culvers. Meanwhile, at his home, you have this operation that was going on, another SWAT operation, but this time his mom, Mary, was detained, and she thought that they were actually coming to the house just to see what she might have information-wise in the case. But she says that is when she's taken out, put in the back of a cop car, and she has no idea what's going on. Listen to what she had to say.
They were there for about 6 hours, and I was in the SWAT vehicle, and they went through my house and went through everything and tore everything, broke my, if the door was locked, they would break it open to go see what was in there. There really wasn't anything in there, but you know, it was pretty upsetting.
Well, and it's one thing to come to you and say, do you have any video or anything like that? It's another to detain you and search your house with a search warrant. Did they tell you why?
I guess I assumed, you know, because I lived close by or something, but I just said I'd do anything to, if we could find some clues that might help, but I don't think there's going to be anything in here, but go ahead and look.
So when they detained you, did you know that this was related to also them investigating Luke?
No.
You had no idea?
No, I wasn't thinking this was about Luke. You know, I found out it was also about Luke, but initially, no, I was thinking it was all about Nancy Guthrie and finding her and whatnot. So, because I was thinking, I don't even think Luke probably ever watched the news and even saw Savannah.
So when did you learn that, you know, your detainment was related to Luke's detainment in this case?
When? I'm not exactly sure when, because honestly, during this time, there were lots of information coming in, and so I don't remember exactly the time, but I know that in retrospect, I know all this stuff that it did, but initially I didn't think of it being Luke as part of this, because I knew it wasn't something that Luke would be involved in any way, and he wasn't.
When you learned, was there any thought was
involved?
And Mary stands by that. She absolutely does not believe Luke was involved at all. So where does it stand with the Dailies? Well, Luke said that he has received the Range Rover back. He has his car back. So that can lead us to assume and believe that that car was completely processed. They don't need it anymore in the investigation. They've given it back. But the Daily family has dealt with, obviously, the sheriff now, they are moving on from the people who were detained, at least in some capacity, whatever that means. There's still many people that believe that Luke is involved. And that's really hard for a family who isn't facing any charges but has to live in public right now while this is all going on. So Luke talks about the fact that led them to him, but also he can't.
It just seems like saying my eyelashes match the guy in the ski
No,
mask
the thing
picture.
is, he does look a lot like the person in the ski mask. We've talked about that, but a lot of people will. But my main thing is this: just all these clothes he's got.
Which I'm sure, like, if you could use anyone's picture and find similarities.
And you don't recognize the person on that in that footage?
No, I don't. But in terms of all this, like I said, they're comparing my face to this. They're talking about my Range Rover, which I didn't even buy until after she was reported missing.
It was a new car, yeah, for you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're talking about another car that was towed off my property. That car wasn't an accident, has nothing to do with this. It wasn't towed in relation to this case. It was being towed by the insurance company to assume if it was totaled or not. So that had nothing to do with the case. There's no evidence to point towards me other than speculation.
You really have no idea what led them to you in this case?
Absolutely not.
Still a mystery to you?
Yes, and I would love to find out.
Now, his attorney says they have not seen the sealed federal search warrant. His attorney has also said that they will possibly pursue legal action against what happened to the Dailies in this case. Now, I do want to show you guys some behind the scenes footage that we shot of the interview. This is not something I would typically do, but I posted this on social media. We had shot some behind the scenes footage as we were just preparing for the interview. I want to take this full, Jason, if you can, just to show the full aspect here. The reason why I showed this was people wanted to see what he looked like walking in, what he looked like, what he was wearing, any sort of body jewelry, markings, etc. And I wouldn't normally post something like this, but people were curious, and we don't have anything to hide from the video that we have here as we were getting ready. So this is what Luke looked like when he came in. He was very respectful of us, again, not facing any charges. But people have wanted to see this raw stuff look like what, trying to kind of see, oh my gosh, well, could he walk like the person that's on the video? And again, I just want to say that he has been detained and released in this case. He is not facing any charges as of now. And so you can at least see what he's wearing. There's been a lot of people who have commented and been kind of suspicious of the fact that he was wearing long sleeves and warm.
So yeah, a lot of people, Marg, have said that he looks like the guy. Let's just have a reminder. The thing is, he's clean shaven. He's shaved off his beard and moustache. But you can see that he's got a shadow there right under his lip, where the balaclava guy, or porch guy as they call him, where he's got that bit of facial hair there right under his lip. Whereas in his interview, Luke has shaved his facial hair off. And his eyes do look similar. But I do think, that picture is so generic. There's a lot of people it could look like. But yeah, my concern, as I just keep saying, is why is he got all these clothes on? It looks like he's got a shirt on under his shirt even. Because notice that that Brianna has got just a little red dress on.
Warm clothes. Meanwhile, people have commented I had on a sleeveless dress. Look, for me, it was 90 degrees in Arizona on Monday. I was hot, and that's how I function. And I wear clothes like that. I don't know what Luke wants to wear or what he typically wears. Maybe he felt this was the best outfit or clothing he had for an interview, a sit-down interview. I have no idea, but you can see at least here, we wanted to pull back the layer and show you, look, here's what we have. You can look at this video. I know people will make their own opinions and assumptions, but again, Luke Daly, as of now, is not facing any charges in this investigation. There have been no other search warrants served, according to Sheriff Chris Nanos today. But as it goes for Luke Daly and Carlos, who were detained as well.
Yeah, so exactly that. We have to remember he hasn't been charged. Nobody has been charged. 2 people detained, different cars towed away. Tommaso, of course, his and Annie's car was towed away, but apparently they've got that back now. Nancy's car is back now. So they've just been, the police at the end of the day, the law enforcement, they've been going through the motions, haven't they? Now, that was interesting what Luke said there. He said he didn't even have that Range Rover until after Nancy was kidnapped. So, even though they processed it, it was a new car for him. And he said there was this is just what he said. I don't know if it's true or not. He had another car on his property that he said was in an accident, and that was towed by the insurance company, not by the police. The thing is, because nobody knows who did this yet, he is going to stay under suspicion. And even Tommaso, even though the sheriff came out and said he wasn't under suspicion, and even though they've got their car back, people are still saying, no, it's definitely still something to do with Tommaso. And the problem is because they haven't caught the person who did it. When they catch the person who did it, and it's not Tommaso or not Luke or not the other guy, Carlos, then they'll come out of being under suspicion. But maybe even then, people will be saying, oh, well, they must have had something to do with it. Ultimately, you can't help what people will say. People say all sorts of things, don't they? Especially when they don't know any real information. That's been a problem here. And then Sheriff Nanos, of course, with his conflicting information, that hasn't helped, has it?
As Mary, Sheriff Nanos says they are moving on.
That's it. I wanted to show that. I personally really like Brianna. I think she's a very good interviewer. I've seen her. That's probably why she gets the interviews, because people will be interviewed by her because they know that she's not, what's her name? That horrible woman, the Laurie Daybell or Valo Daybell or whatever, the Doomsday Cult mum. She was interviewed by Brianna. Well, Brianna, that's a big scoop to get an interview with someone like that. Personally, as far as Laurie is concerned, I don't think she should be allowed to do interviews because, she's been found guilty of murder on several accounts of murder and attempted murder. So personally, I wouldn't give her a voice. But you can see for a journalist, that's a big scoop, isn't it, to get an interview with Laurie Daybell? It is. And Laurie will have picked Brianna not because she doesn't think Brianna's, I do think Brianna asks the right questions, but she doesn't come down on any, one side or another. She's, Laurie Daybell's not going to be interviewed by somebody like me who'd be saying to her, why are you such a cow that you murdered your children? That sort of thing. She's going to want to be interviewed with someone that, you've got to be dispassionate. I think that would be a problem for me to be a mainstream journalist because it's hard to be dispassionate, when it's things like Laurie Daybell and all the people that died because of her, including her children, including JJ. It's just horrible, that whole story, isn't it? So yeah, to be a mainstream journalist, you have to be dispassionate to a point, because that's your job. You're not supposed to show bias. And that's what I would find really difficult. Too emotional. That's why I could never have been a politician. You've got to be quite dispassionate. That's just the way it is. So I'd rather be me, and I'll just say what I really think. And not that I think that Luke is guilty. I don't know about Luke. I literally do not know. And if I could just understand why he wore so many clothes when it was 90 degrees outside, but it may be that he just wanted to look smart for the interview. I don't know what he normally wears. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what his normal style of dress is. Do you know what I mean? Night, old hippie. Yeah, time for you to go to bed. You're getting grouchy as you're getting tired. More grouchy than normal. Anyway, we'll see you in the next one probably. We might have, there isn't really much, it's not much. The only other, as I say, new news, if you like, is that the FBI were out there again yesterday interviewing the neighbours. So it's still an active case. I'd be very surprised if it isn't solved in the end. I really do feel that it is going to be solved. But I just feel why it's taking so long, I don't understand. But, investigations take time. And although it's good to have all the tips that they've got, that can also hold things up, can't it? Because they have to investigate every tip. So even yesterday when JLR was around there, one of the neighbours contacted him, didn't they, and said there was like a mug, a cup in their garden, and it had a G on it, and it was just placed there in the middle of the garden, or roundabout, maybe not their garden. So JLR went up there, had a look at it, took a photo of it. And then when he saw the FBI agent, so it was like a white mug, that you put your tea in or your coffee, with a G on it. And it was just there in the middle of this person's sort of garden, I suppose, under a tree. So JR went, he didn't touch it. He never touches anything. He just took a photo of it. And when the FBI were wandering around, he actually, one thing I do like about JLO, he'll go up and ask a question. He doesn't care if someone tells him to get stuffed, or, he'll go up and he'll ask a question. I worry about him sometimes. I think, God, you put yourself at risk, really, because people, there's a lot of crazies out there, and they get angry, don't they? Anyway, not that the FBI were going to shoot him, I suppose. But he went up and told them about it, and he gave them the screenshot and the coordinates of where it was. And it's gone now, apparently, according to JLR. So did the FBI take it? Or did somebody else see that and go and get that mug or that cup? I don't know. But so they're still roundabout. They're still talking to neighbours. It's an active case. It's as active as a case can be. I think it'll take a long, long time before it goes cold, in the sense of the word that cold case means all leads exhausted and nothing. So these probably take them a year at least to go through all these different leads. And who knows which one will be the one that finds the perpetrator. It's like... who knows which is the lead that will lead to somebody. Sometimes it can be a throwaway comment. And I know, I think I've mentioned before, it reminds me a little bit of that Helen Bailey, the authoress who was killed by her horrible husband, and her and her little dog Boris. And they were put in the septic tank underneath the garage. And then this guy parked his car over the lid of the septic tank. So when the police went and searched the house when Helen went missing, they didn't even know about this septic tank. And it was only a neighbour's comment after Helen had been missing a while and they were coming up with nothing as to where she was. It was only a comment by a neighbour, oh, do you know there's a septic tank under the garage? So off they went to the septic tank, moved the car, and who was in the septic tank but poor Helen and her little sausage dog Boris that had tricked into going in there with Helen. So, you know, yeah, offhand comment, an offhand comment can lead to the solving of a case. And my own personal opinion, and it is just opinion because I don't know where Nancy is, I still feel she's not far away. I don't believe she's gone to Mexico. They took her to Mexico. I don't think Mexico's got anything to do with it, in my opinion, whatsoever. Otherwise, I think if the FBI suspected that, why have no announcements been done in Spanish? You know, it's all in English. And surely if they thought that Nancy or the perpetrator might have gone over to the border, surely they'd be making appeals in Spanish as well. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I think she is round about somewhere in that area, but she could be anywhere. They had a couple of hours to dispose of Nancy if she is deceased. If she's alive, what is the purpose? I mean, they haven't done a proper ransom, you know, no ransom that can be paid. You know, the Guthries said they were going to pay the ransom, but it's not led to any proof of life or whatever. So I just cannot believe that she's been kidnapped for a ransom because, you know, the ransom notes only came out a couple of days later. There were never a contact for them to get in touch with and have a dialogue about how to give them the ransom. No proof of life. So all the normal things that are involved in ransom cases are not in this case. So that leaves us with burglary gone wrong. Again, I just don't believe that. I don't know why Nancy was targeted. Maybe because, and now it could be a burglary, but they must have known that Nancy had something particular in that house, maybe money hidden around. The thing is, if Nancy had cash hidden around, her family might not even know that. You know, so people might not even know that cash is missing because we don't know how the person knew about it. But hi, Admit. You're just coming in. I'm just finishing off now. But yeah, I mean, let me know what you all think. Please let me know your theories on one, who did it? I mean, that's a difficult one, isn't it? Do you think Luke was involved or even the Carlos who was initially detained? Again, he was released, but does that mean he's cleared? Sheriff Nanos is not saying that he's cleared. Some people still thinking it's something to do with Tommaso, even though he's been cleared and their car's been returned. Or is it somebody who we've not even heard of so far? Somebody, you know, somebody, I don't know, an electrician who worked on her house, or the pool cleaner, or somebody who knows the pool cleaner, or someone who knows the home help, or whoever people, you know, if Nancy had people in her house to clean or to help out here and there. It's not even necessarily them. It's who they might let something slip to. The Uber driver, you know, that Uber driver's like, oh, guess who I took to their daughter's house today? Savannah Guthrie's mum. You know, she lives on her own in that house, all on her own, no dog, no alarm. You know, you just don't know. Careless words cost lives. People can make a throwaway comment. You don't know who's listening. Might not even seen at the time, you know, that they're even registering what's being said, but you just don't know what's going on in their head, do you? And going back to that Helen Bailey case, only Ian was caught, her husband was caught because of a throwaway comment. Apparently, it was a throwaway comment from Helen Bailey's brother when he went to the house you know, before obviously Helen was murdered, went round there and saw that and made a comment about the cesspit and said, "Oh, that's a good place to hide a body." He said that in all innocence, not realizing Ian, he was listening, he clocked that when this brother said this. I think it was a brother, it was a relative, made the throwaway comment, jokey comment, "Oh, that's a good place to hide a body." Ian registered it in his head and he started planning. And all the time he was drugging Helen bit by bit. And they think that Helen was alive when she went into that cesspit. He's probably a bit of a coward to actually kill her. You know, that's probably he probably drugged her and then just pushed her in. And then apparently threw a toy in there, so that a dog toy in there, so a dog would jump in with her. You know, he's a real piece of shit. I hope he's having a horrible time in prison. I honestly do hope he's having a terrible time. He's a nasty, horrible. Oh, because of course with him as well, then it turned out his first wife had died in mysterious circumstances and he killed her as well. So he'd killed two wives. Yeah. You know, there are some real horrible people in the world, aren't there? Oh my God. You just think it is depressing sometimes. It's so depressing. Anyway, so whoever did this to Nancy, they're a pretty horrible person, aren't they? Horrible twonk. To put an 84-year-old woman through, even if, you know, even if she was the most horrible person in the world, you know, which she obviously wasn't. I'm not saying that she was, but to treat you know, even if they're not a nice person, what you do to an 84-year-old says something about you. You know, to do something to someone so vulnerable, you know, asleep in a bed. Did they have a grudge against her, or is it to do with Savannah, or even to Danny and Tommaso? So I think nobody talks. You know, it's always because Savannah's the favourite, the famous one, or someone with a grudge against Savannah. But maybe someone who had a grudge against Tommaso or Annie. You know, people have grudges for all sorts of reasons, the most pathetic reasons you can imagine. Someone can have a grudge over, I don't know, your hedge or your fence is half an inch over on their side, and these grudges can develop between neighbours as well, can't they? Small things grow into big things. You know, arguments over parking spaces. You just... things that people will do for reasons that we think, what? That's not worth doing that over. But things grow in people's minds, don't they? So, you know, you just never know. Yeah, he was an evil monster, wasn't he, Mark? Anyway, okay, if you remember, I will see you later on tonight. Thank you for watching. Any news about Nancy, I'll be here to tell you about it. Maybe something will break over the weekend. We keeps feeling like something's going to break, and then nothing does. Another 3 days go by with nothing. But sooner or later, I mean, I am convinced this case will be solved. I hope it is sooner or later. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and press notifications. See you really soon in the next video. And until then, as always, may your God go with you. Enjoy, and prayers for Nancy.